The night I was rushed into emergency heart surgery, my parents didn't answer a single call. Not one. While I was lying on a hospital bed, wires attached to my chest, struggling to breathe, the two people who were supposed to love me the most were busy living their lives like I didn't exist. I almost died that night. But 5 years later, those same parents would stand at my front door begging me to save them. And this time, I didn't open the door right away. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 29 years old, and for most of my life, I was the invisible son. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the priority. I wasn't even the problem. I was just nothing to them. I grew up in a quiet suburban home where everything looked perfect, from the outside white fence, trimmed lawn, family dinners on Sundays. But inside that house, love had conditions, and I never met them. My parents always had time for my younger brother, Jason. He was the golden child. Straight A's, star athlete, charming smile, everything they ever wanted. And me? I was the quiet one, the kid who stayed in his room, the one who didn't make noise because I learned very early that no one was listening anyway. Every achievement I had was compared to Jason. Every mistake I made was magnified. Every time I needed help, I was told to figure it out. By the time I turned 18, I already knew one thing for sure. If I wanted a life, I would have to build it alone. So I did. I worked 2 part-time jobs while going to college. I paid my own tuition. I rented a tiny apartment with secondhand furniture and a leaking ceiling. It was hard, but it was mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. I didn't call my parents much. Not because I hated them, but because I had accepted the truth. You can't chase love from people who never planned to give it. Years passed. I graduated. I found a stable job in finance. I slowly built a decent life for myself. Nothing luxurious, but peaceful. And then, everything changed in one night. It started with a sharp pain in my chest. At first, I thought it was stress. I had been working long hours, drinking too much coffee, barely sleeping, but the pain didn't go away. It got worse, heavier, like something inside my chest was collapsing. I remember dropping my phone. I remember the room spinning. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in an ambulance. The paramedics were shouting, machines were beeping, and someone kept telling me, "Stay with us. Stay awake." At the hospital, everything moved fast. Doctors rushed me into emergency tests. Nurses injected things into my veins. Someone said the words I will never forget. "Severe cardiac condition. He needs surgery. Immediately." Emergency heart surgery. At 24 years old, I was terrified. I didn't have time to process anything. They handed me a consent form. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. And then one of the nurses asked me a simple question. "Is there anyone you want us to call?" I froze, because even after everything, I still thought of my parents. I gave them the number. I told myself, this is different. This is life or death. Of course they will come. The nurse called. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. She tried a third time. Still nothing. I remember staring at the ceiling as a cold realization settled into my chest, colder than the hospital air. They weren't coming. Not for this. Not even for this. The nurse gently asked if there was anyone else. Friends? Relatives? Anyone? But I had spent so many years being independent that I had built a life with no emergency contacts. So I signed the form alone. I walked into that operating room alone. And I faced the possibility of dying, completely alone. As they rolled me under the bright surgical lights, I made a promise to myself. If I survived this, I would never depend on anyone who had already abandoned me, ever again. When I woke up after surgery, everything felt distant. My chest was heavy. My body was weak. My throat hurt from the breathing tube, but I was alive. The doctor later told me it had been close, too close. If I had arrived even an hour later, I wouldn't have made it. I spent weeks recovering. Not a single visit, not a single call, not even a message. It was like I had disappeared from their lives, and they didn't even notice. That was the moment something inside me finally broke and rebuilt itself into something stronger. I stopped expecting anything from them. I stopped hoping. I stopped caring. And slowly, I started building a new version of my life, one without them in it. 5 years passed, 5 long years of recovery, growth, discipline, and silence. I worked harder than ever. I invested wisely. I built my own small financial consulting firm. I bought my own house, not a big one, but a beautiful, quiet place that felt safe, a place where no one could ignore me, a place where no one could make me feel small. For the first time in my life, I had control, peace, respect. And then one evening, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the security camera app on my phone, and the moment I saw who was standing outside, my entire past came rushing back like a storm. My mother, my father, standing on my porch, looking older, tired, desperate. The same 2 people who didn't answer the phone when I was dying were now standing at my door, begging to be let in. And suddenly, I realized something. They didn't come back because they loved me. They came back because they needed me. And this time, the choice was mine. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there, staring at the screen, watching them through the camera like they were strangers. Because in many ways, they were. My father looked older than I remembered. His shoulders, once stiff with pride, now seemed heavy. My mother's face looked thinner, her eyes restless, scanning the porch like she was afraid someone might see them there. Good. Let them feel uncomfortable. Let them feel what it's like to wait, to be ignored, to not matter. For a full minute, I didn't move. Another knock. This time, louder. Then my father's voice came through the door. "Ethan, I know you're home. We just want to talk." That voice, the same voice that once told me to man up when I was struggling. The same voice that never once said, "I'm proud of you." And now suddenly, he wanted to talk. I took a slow breath. 5 years ago, I would have rushed to open that door. I would have been desperate for any kind of attention from them. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had built a life, a strong one, without them. So I unlocked the door, slowly, and opened it just enough to stand in the doorway. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite them in. I just looked at them. Silence hung between us. My mother's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. "Oh my God, Ethan," she whispered, like she was seeing a ghost. You look so healthy." I didn't respond. My father cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the moment. "You're doing well for yourself," he said, glancing past me into the house. I noticed that. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at what I had. The house, the furniture, the life. And right there, I knew this wasn't a visit filled with regret. This was a visit filled with need. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice calm, flat, controlled. They both exchanged a quick glance. That tiny moment of hesitation told me everything. My father spoke first. We've been going through some difficulties," he said carefully. "Of course you have." My mother stepped forward slightly, her voice trembling. "Your father lost his job last year, and then we had some medical bills. And Jason," I cut her off. "Jason what?" Silence again. My father's jaw tightened. "Jason made some bad financial decisions," he admitted, almost like it physically hurt him to say it out loud. "We helped him, and it didn't go well." I almost laughed. Of course they did. Of course they sacrificed everything for Jason. They always had. "And now?" I asked. My father swallowed his pride. Now came the real reason. "We need help, Ethan." There it was. Finally, no apology, no acknowledgement of the past, no mention of the night I almost died. Just, "We need help." I leaned slightly against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "How much?" My father hesitated, like saying the number out loud would make it more real. $80,000. The number hung in the air between us. 80,000. 5 years ago, that number would have crushed me. Today, I could transfer that amount from my business account in less than 5 minutes. But that wasn't the point. The point was, where were they when I needed help? When I needed one phone call answered? When I needed one person to show up? I looked at my mother. "Did you know I had heart surgery?" Her face froze. My father frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I felt something cold settle into my chest. They called you, I said quietly. The hospital. 5 years ago. Emergency surgery. They called you 3 times. My mother's hand slowly covered her mouth. I don't remember that, she whispered. My father's expression hardened, not with guilt, but with defensiveness. We never got any call like that, he said quickly. I held his gaze. Yes, you did. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. For a brief second, I saw it in their eyes. Doubt, regret, fear. But it passed quickly, because this wasn't why they were here. They weren't here to fix the past. They were here to fix their present. My father straightened his posture again, like he was trying to take back control. Look, Ethan, he said, his tone shifting slightly. We're family. Families help each other. That's how it works. That sentence, that exact sentence, I had heard it my entire childhood, only it was always one-sided. I pushed myself off the doorframe and stood straight. You're right, I said calmly. Families do help each other. A small look of relief flashed across my mother's face. My father nodded, like he expected nothing less. But here's the thing, I continued. I learned how to survive without a family. Their expressions changed instantly. Confusion, uncertainty, and just a little bit of fear. Because for the first time in my life, they didn't know what I was going to say next. And I wasn't the weak, quiet, invisible son anymore. I was the man they had ignored. Standing in a house they couldn't afford, holding the power they suddenly needed. And I hadn't decided yet if I was going to give it to them. I let the silence sit there. I wanted them to feel it, to feel the weight of every second I spent alone in a hospital bed, wondering if my family even cared whether I lived or died. My father finally broke the silence. So, are you going to help us or not? He asked, his voice tighter now. Straight to the point. No apology, no regret. Just a transaction. I studied his face for a moment, then I nodded once. I will help you, I said calmly. Relief flooded my mother's face so quickly it almost looked like she might collapse. My father let out a breath he had clearly been holding in, but I held up a hand. On one condition, that relief disappeared instantly. My father's eyes narrowed. What condition? I stepped fully into the doorway now, making it clear I wasn't inviting them in yet. I want the truth, I said. My mother blinked. The truth about what? About that night, I replied. The night I was taken into surgery. The night the hospital called you. My father's jaw tightened again. I already told you. We never got that call. Yes, I cut in, my voice still calm but now sharper. You did. I turned and walked inside for a moment, leaving them standing there, confused. I grabbed my phone from the hallway table and came back. Then I tapped the screen and held it up. Call logs, saved voicemail recordings, timestamps. 3 calls, I said quietly. 2 voicemails, all from the hospital. All to your number. My mother's face went pale. My father stared at the screen, then looked away quickly. That doesn't prove anything, he muttered. I stepped a little closer. It proves the hospital called, I said. So either you ignored it, I paused, or someone made sure you never saw it. That's when something shifted in my mother's expression. Confusion turned into realization, and then horror. Her eyes slowly turned toward my father. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. My father's voice rose defensively. What are you implying? But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was looking at my mother. Who had access to your phone records back then? I asked quietly. Who handled your bills, your voicemail, your accounts? Her lips trembled. Jason, she whispered. There it was, the name that had always been protected, always defended, always prioritized. My father immediately shook his head. That's ridiculous. Why would Jason do something like that? I held his gaze, because if I died that night, I said slowly, he would have been the only son left. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. My mother staggered back a step like I had physically hit her. No, he wouldn't. He's your brother. I shook my head gently. No, Mom, I said softly. He's your favorite." Tears spilled down her cheeks. My father looked angry now, but not at me. At the situation, at the possibility that something had happened outside of his control. "That's a serious accusation," he said. "You better have more than a theory." I nodded once. "I do." I turned my phone around again and opened another file. An old email, a forwarded message, a billing statement, and one specific detail highlighted. A voicemail deletion log, deleted manually, from their home account, at a time when only one person had the password. Jason. My father's face slowly drained of color as he read it. My mother let out a broken sob. I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear, Ethan, I didn't know." I believed her, but that didn't erase what happened, or what didn't happen. My father looked up at me again, his voice quieter now. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then we need to talk to Jason." I nodded. "Yes," I said. "You do." I slipped my phone back into my pocket. "And that's my condition." They both looked at me, confused. "You want an apology from him?" my father asked. I shook my head. "No." I took a slow breath. "I want the truth said out loud, in front of all of us. No lies, no excuses, no protecting him." My mother nodded quickly through her tears. Yes, of course. If he did this, I said, cutting in gently, then you need to decide what kind of family you really are." My father stared at me for a long moment. Then finally, slowly, he nodded. "All right," he said. "We'll bring Jason. We'll sit down, and we'll get the truth." I stepped back slightly and opened the door wider. "For now," I said calmly, "you can come in." They hesitated for a second, almost like they didn't feel they had the right to walk into my house. That was new. That was different. And they felt it. Good. They stepped inside slowly, looking around at everything, the clean space, the quiet strength of the home I had built without them. My mother wiped her tears, her voice barely above a whisper. "You did all this on your own?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. A long pause. Then I added, "The same way I survived." My father didn't say anything. For once, he didn't have the words. But this wasn't over, not even close. Because the next time we all sat down together, Jason would be there, and the truth he buried 5 years ago was about to come out. Jason arrived the next evening. I watched him walk up my driveway through the living room window, same confident stride, same careless posture, like the world still owed him something, like nothing had ever happened. Like 5 years ago, I hadn't almost died. My parents were already seated on the couch. My mother's hands were shaking. My father sat rigid, his jaw locked tight. I stayed standing. When the doorbell rang, I didn't rush. I took my time. Because for the first time in my life, he was the one waiting on me. I opened the door. Jason gave a half smirk. "Wow, nice place, Ethan. Didn't know you were doing this well." I didn't smile back. "Come in," I said simply. He stepped inside, glancing around with that same measuring look, judging, comparing, calculating. Then he noticed our parents sitting there. The mood, the tension, his smirk faded just a little. "Okay. What's going on?" he asked, looking between all of us. No one answered him. I closed the door behind him. The click of the lock sounded louder than it should have. My father stood up slowly. "Sit down, Jason," he said. That was enough for him to realize this wasn't casual. He sat. I remained standing across from him. We stared at each other for a moment. Then I spoke. 5 years ago, I said, my voice steady, when I was taken into emergency heart surgery. The hospital called Mom and Dad. Jason shrugged lightly. "Okay, and?" "And the calls were deleted," I continued. "The voicemails were erased from their account, from inside the system, using the account password." Jason didn't react, at least not at first. My father stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You were the only one who had access to that account at the time." Now Jason's eyes flicked toward him, then to my mother, then back to me. And there it was, that tiny crack in his composure. "Are you seriously accusing me of something right now?" he said, his tone sharpening. "I'm asking you," I replied calmly. "Did you delete those messages?" Silence. Jason let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "This is insane." My mother's voice broke as she spoke. "Jason, please," she whispered. "Just tell us the truth." He looked at her, and for a split second, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, but it disappeared almost instantly. "I don't even remember that," he said dismissively. "It was years ago." I took a slow step closer. "I remember," I said quietly. His eyes met mine, and this time I didn't look away. "I remember lying in that hospital bed," I continued, "waiting for you, waiting for Mom, waiting for Dad. I remember the nurse telling me they called. I remember believing you'd show up any minute." The room was completely silent now. "I remember waking up after surgery," I went on, my voice tightening slightly, "and still, no one came." Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My father's voice cut in, sharper now. "Answer the question." Jason's jaw clenched. "No," he said flatly. "I didn't delete anything." Another lie. I reached into my pocket again and pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and placed it on the table in front of him. The deletion log, the timestamp, his login ID, his IP address, everything. Jason stared at the screen, and this time, he didn't laugh. He didn't deny it. He didn't even breathe. My mother gasped softly. My father went completely still. The truth was sitting right there, undeniable, heavy, real. "Jason," my mother whispered, her voice breaking into pieces. "Tell me this isn't true." Jason dragged a hand down his face. For the first time in his life, he looked small, cornered, trapped. He started, then stopped. The silence stretched, and then finally, he exhaled. "Okay," he muttered. That one word hit the room like a bomb. My mother let out a sob. My father's voice turned cold. "Okay? What?" Jason looked up at me, and there was no more pretending now. "I deleted them," he said. The words echoed. My mother covered her mouth. My father staggered back a step, and I just stood there, because I already knew, but hearing him say it still hurt. "Why?" my mother cried. "Why would you do something like that?" Jason snapped, his voice rising now. "Because everything was always about him!" he shouted, pointing at me.